So I never thought I'd be the kind of person to post something like this, like ever. But here I am, sharing the darkest, most fucked up experience of my life because I seriously don't know what to do anymore. Maybe you'll think I'm lying, maybe you'll call me crazy, but I swear this shit is real, and I need to get it off my chest before I lose it completely. It all started about a year ago. My ex-wife Ashley and I had been married for about 5 years. We weren't perfect, but who is, right? We were a regular couple, or at least I thought we were. I worked my ass off as a construction manager, pulling in long hours so we could afford the house, the car, and all the other bullshit that comes with suburban life. She worked part-time as a dental hygienist and spent most of her days off shopping, meeting with friends, or at the gym. At first, I didn't think much of it. It's normal, you know. People need space. But then, weird things started happening. She'd get texts in the middle of the night, and her phone was always face down when we were together. She started taking longer and longer shopping trips and gym sessions. I'd ask her about it, and she'd brush me off, saying I was paranoid or overthinking. Then, one night, I came home early from work. I had this gut feeling something was off. It wasn't even a planned thing. I just left the site early, grabbed a six-pack, and thought I'd surprise her. When I pulled into the driveway, there was a car parked out front. A car I'd never seen before. It was this sleek black BMW, the kind of guy trying to show off his money would drive. My heart started racing, and my hands were shaking as I unlocked the door. The house was dead silent, but there was this weird, low murmur coming from upstairs. I crept up the stairs trying to convince myself that it was nothing. Maybe she had a friend over, or maybe she was watching a movie or something.
But then I heard it, a man's voice. It was muffled, but it was definitely a guy. I stopped in front of our bedroom door, which was only half closed, and peered in through the crack. There she was, my wife straddling some guy I'd never seen before. They were going at it like animals, and she was making noises I'd never heard her make before. Not with me, anyway. I fucking snapped. I don't remember much after that, honestly. I kicked the door open, and everything went red. I grabbed the guy and yanked him off her, and I hit him. Hard. Over and over. He tried to fight back, but I was too far gone. I wanted to kill him right then and there. I remember Ashley screaming, begging me to stop, but I couldn't hear her. All I could hear was the sound of my fist hitting his face and the blood pounding in my ears. Somehow, he managed to break free and ran out of the house, leaving me standing there, covered in his blood, while my wife, my fucking wife, stood there naked and crying. I wanted to hit her too, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I just stared at her. I didn't say a word. I just grabbed my keys, walked out the front door, and drove away. I ended up at a bar, drinking myself into oblivion, trying to wrap my head around what I'd just seen. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. I spent the next few days crashing at a friend's place, ignoring her calls and texts, trying to figure out what the fuck I was going to do. She eventually apologized, of course. Said it was a mistake, that she didn't know what she was thinking, and that it wouldn't happen again. But I couldn't get the image of her with that guy out of my head. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. All I could think about was how she betrayed me. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him. That's when the idea first came to me. I don't know why or how, but one night while I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling, I thought, what if I could get rid of her for good?
I spent hours scrolling through forums and message boards reading about the dark web. You hear stories, right? People hiring hitmen, buying drugs, all kinds of illegal shit. But I never thought it was real, until I found a forum where people were actually discussing it. They talked about how to access it, what you could find, and, most importantly, how to hire someone to make your problems disappear. At first, I thought it was bullshit. But the more I read, the more convinced I became that this was real. These people weren't just talking hypotheticals. They were sharing stories, actual experiences, and even leaving reviews on services they'd used. It was fucking insane. I didn't jump right into it, though. I mean, I was pissed, but I wasn't a murderer. Or at least I didn't think I was. I spent weeks just lurking, reading, trying to decide if I could actually go through with it. But every time I saw Ashley, Every time I heard her voice, it was like pouring salt in an open wound. She was still living in the house, still pretending like everything was fine, like she hadn't ripped my fucking heart out. And I couldn't take it anymore. So I did it. I pulled the trigger. I followed the steps I'd read about. Downloaded the Tor browser, set up a burner email, and finally accessed one of the sites I'd been reading about. It was simple. Way too fucking simple. You go to this site, pick the service you want, and then negotiate the price. It was like ordering something off fucking Amazon. The guy I found called himself Ghost. Cliché, I know, but he had a solid reputation, and the reviews on him were stellar. No one had ever been caught after using him, and his methods were apparently clean and efficient.
We exchanged a few emails. I told him what I wanted, gave him Ashley's information, her address, a picture of her, even her fucking routine. He responded almost immediately, asking for half the payment up front in Bitcoin, the rest after the job was done. I hesitated for a minute before sending the money, my finger hovering over the mouse. But then I remembered her with that guy, how she had destroyed everything we built together. And I clicked send. I felt sick. Like I literally threw up right after I did it. But at the same time I felt relieved. This was it. She was going to be gone, and I'd finally be free of her. Ghost said it would take about a week. He didn't give me any details, just that I'd know when it was done. And that's when the waiting began. The first few days were brutal. Every time the phone rang or I heard a knock at the door, my heart would race. I kept imagining the cops showing up, arresting me before anything even happened. But nothing did. Life just kept going, and Ashley was still there, completely oblivious to the fact that her days were numbered. Then, about 5 days in, something strange happened. I came home from work, and the house was different. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but it felt off. Quiet. Too quiet. Normally Ashley would be watching TV or talking on the phone, but this time there was nothing. Just silence. I called out for her, but there was no answer. That's when I noticed her purse on the counter, her keys next to it. Her phone was there too, something that never happened. She was glued to that thing, always texting or scrolling through Instagram. I felt this cold chill run down my spine as I walked through the house calling her name. Nothing. It was like she had just vanished. And that's when I got the email. It was from Ghost. 2 words. It's done.
So, I stood there in the middle of the living room, just staring at my phone. Those 2 words, it's done. I don't know how long I stood there, maybe a few seconds, maybe minutes. Time just kinda stopped. I wasn't sure what to feel. Relief? Guilt? Fear? All of them were mixing together like some fucked up cocktail in my head. I kept waiting for something to happen. Police sirens, a knock at the door, a phone call. But nothing. It was just me, standing there in the empty house. I started to panic a little. I mean, what does "it's done" even mean exactly? Was she dead? Did he kill her here in the house while I was at work? I hadn't even thought about the how. I just wanted her gone, but now reality was slapping me in the face. Was there blood upstairs? Did he dump the body? Or worse, did he leave it here for me to clean up? I had to know. I started checking the rooms, half expecting to find her body somewhere. Her eyes wide open, staring at me from the floor or sprawled out on the bed. I felt like I was in one of those fucked up crime documentaries you see on TV. The kind where the husband acts, all surprised when the cops find his wife's body in the basement, but deep down you know he did it. But the thing is, she wasn't anywhere. I searched every corner of the house, our bedroom, the bathroom, the basement. There was nothing, not even a single sign of a struggle. It was like she had just vanished into thin air. The weirdest part, everything was normal. There were no signs of forced entry, no overturned furniture, no blood. Her clothes were still hanging in the closet, her makeup was scattered on the bathroom counter, and her car was still in the driveway. It was like she'd just walked out the door and never came back.
I stood in the kitchen, my mind racing. Where the hell was she? What did Ghost do with her? I needed answers, but I couldn't exactly email the guy and ask for details. I mean, who does that? Hey, just wondering if you buried her in the woods or left her in a dumpster. It's not like there's a fucking customer service line for this shit. I thought about calling the cops, but what would I even say? Hi, my wife's missing, but don't look into it too hard. No, that wasn't an option. I just have to wait. Maybe something would come up in the news. Maybe her body would turn up somewhere and I'd be in the clear. But the waiting was the worst part. Every day that passed, I became more paranoid. Every sound in the house made me jump. Every time the phone rang, my stomach twisted in knots. I stopped going to work, stopped talking to my friends. I couldn't concentrate on anything. My entire life was on hold, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then, shit got even weirder. It was about 3 days after I got the email. I was sitting in the living room, staring at the TV, but I wasn't really watching it. I was just lost in my thoughts, trying to figure out what to do next. That's when I heard it, a sound from upstairs. Footsteps. At first I thought I was imagining it. I mean, I was alone, right? Ashley was gone. I had to be hearing things, my brain fucking with me because of the stress. But then I heard it again. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, like someone was walking down the hallway upstairs. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I grabbed the closest thing I could find, a fucking table lamp, and crept toward the stairs. The house was dead silent, except for those footsteps. I could hear them moving toward the top of the stairs, and every hair on my body stood on end.
I didn't call out. I didn't want to make a sound. I don't know what I was expecting to find. Maybe Ghost had come back for some reason. Maybe it was him up there, waiting to finish the job. Maybe he was just fucking with me. I had no idea. I got to the bottom of the stairs and stopped, listening. The footsteps had stopped too, like whoever it was knew I was there, waiting. My hand tightened around the lamp, and I slowly made my way up the stairs, every step feeling heavier than the last. When I reached the top, the hallway was empty. All the doors were closed, just like I'd left them. But there was this feeling, this presence. You know when you can just tell someone's in the room with you? It was like that. The air was thick, suffocating. My mouth went dry. I moved toward the bedroom, my hand shaking as I reached for the door. My brain was screaming at me not to open it, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to know. I turned the knob and pushed the door open. The room was empty, no one there. But then I saw it, on the bed. A note. It was just sitting there on her side of the bed, where she used to sleep. I walked over, my hands trembling as I picked it up. It was written in this neat, almost delicate handwriting, the kind Ashley used to write with when she'd leave me little notes or grocery lists. Except this note wasn't asking me to pick up milk. It said, "I'm still here." I felt like I was going to throw up. My stomach dropped and I had to sit down. My legs felt like they were going to give out. My mind was racing. What the fuck did that mean? Was she alive? Was this some kind of sick joke? I checked the entire house again. Every room, every closet. Nothing. No one. I even went outside and checked the yard, thinking maybe Ghost had left something, some clue. But there was nothing. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I stayed up, sitting on the couch with every light in the house on, just staring at the note. I'm still here. Was it Ashley? Was she somehow fucking with me? But that didn't make sense. Ghost said it was done. She couldn't have just walked away from that. Or could she? The next few days were a blur. I didn't eat, barely slept, just wandered around the house in a daze. The paranoia was eating me alive. I kept thinking I'd hear those footsteps again, kept expecting to find another note. But nothing happened. Just silence. It was driving me insane. Then, on the fourth night after finding the note, I woke up to the sound of breathing. It was soft, like someone was standing right next to me, watching me sleep. My eyes shot open, and there, standing in the corner of the room, was a shadow. A figure. I shot up in bed, my heart pounding in my chest. I fumbled for the lamp on the nightstand, but by the time I turned it on, the figure was gone. Just the empty room staring back at me. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get out of that house. I grabbed my keys and drove to a hotel on the edge of town. I couldn't think, couldn't process what was happening. All I knew was that something was wrong. Something was in that house, and I wasn't going to stay there and wait for whatever it was to get me. But even at the hotel, I couldn't escape it. I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling when my phone buzzed. It was a message from her phone. It was a picture of me, lying in that hotel bed, right that fucking second.
I don't think I've ever felt true fear until that moment. Seeing that picture pop up on my phone, it was like someone had reached into my chest and crushed my lungs. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The picture was of me, lying there in the same hotel bed, in the exact position I was in right then. The room was dim, but there was no mistaking it. Someone had been watching me. Someone was in the room or had been just moments ago. I bolted upright, scanning the room, but there was nothing. Just me, the shitty hotel furniture, and that fucking picture staring back at me from my phone screen. It was taken from the foot of the bed, low to the ground, like someone had crouched down, trying to stay hidden. The lighting was off, like the picture had been taken through the open door leading to the hallway. I jumped out of bed, threw the door open, and looked down the corridor. Empty. Not a single sound. No footsteps. No one running away. The hotel was dead silent, except for the low hum of a vending machine at the end of the hall. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I was in full-blown panic mode now. I checked the locks on the door again and again, triple-locked it, shoved a chair against it, like that would do anything. But I didn't feel any safer. That message, that fucking picture, meant someone was fucking with me. Someone had been right there, and I never even noticed. I don't know how long I stayed sitting there, staring at my phone, my body tense and shaking. Was it her? Was it Ashley? Or was this ghost coming back to mess with me? But why? I'd paid him. He did the job. He was supposed to be done with me. Then, my phone buzzed again. Another message, same number. I didn't even want to open it, but my hand moved before I could stop it. I clicked on the text. It was just one word. Run.
I nearly dropped my phone. My stomach twisted into knots. Run? What the fuck did that mean? Run from who? From what? I was losing my mind. I had to be. I didn't pack anything. I just grabbed my keys, my wallet, and bolted out of the hotel room. It was 3 a.m. I didn't even have a plan. I just knew I couldn't stay there. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the key into the ignition. When the engine finally roared to life, I peeled out of the parking lot like my life depended on it. I drove for hours, no destination, no idea where I was going. I just needed to get away. But the whole time, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, expecting to see someone following me. The highway was empty, and every shadow on the side of the road looked like it was moving. I was fucking losing it. At some point, the sun started to come up, and I realized I was nearly 2 towns over. I pulled into this dingy little diner, somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. The kind of place that looks like it hasn't seen a renovation since the 80s. I parked in the back lot, hoping I could blend in, maybe just grab some coffee and clear my head. The second I walked in, I could feel everyone's eyes on me. There weren't many people, just a couple of truckers and an old lady at the counter, but it felt like they knew, like they could see right through me. I sat in the farthest booth I could find, ordered a black coffee, and tried to pull myself together. But the paranoia wouldn't go away. I kept checking my phone, waiting for another message, another picture. I kept looking over my shoulder, watching the door, half expecting someone to burst in and drag me out of there. And then, my phone buzzed again. I swear, my hands were shaking so bad I almost knocked over the coffee. The message was from the same number, but this time it was a video. My heart stopped. I knew I shouldn't open it, but I couldn't help myself. I clicked play.
It was grainy, like it had been recorded on some old security camera or a cheap phone. The angle was weird, like it was filmed from above. The video showed a room, a basement maybe. The walls were concrete, cold. There was a chair in the middle of the room, and sitting in it was Ashley. At first I thought it was old footage, maybe a recording from before Ghost got her. But then I noticed she was tied to the chair. Her wrists were bound with what looked like duct tape, her mouth gagged with a dirty piece of cloth. She was shaking, her eyes wild with fear. Her hair was a mess, and her face was bruised. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't fucking believe it. She was alive. The camera zoomed in, focusing on her face. Her eyes were darting around like she knew someone was watching, but she couldn't see them. She started struggling against the tape, whimpering through the gag. And then, from off-screen, a figure walked into the frame. I couldn't see his face, just his back, dressed all in black, wearing gloves. He moved slowly, deliberately, like he was enjoying this. He reached out, grabbing her by the hair, yanking her head back. She screamed through the gag, her eyes wide with terror. The man turned his head, like he was looking directly at the camera, and though I couldn't see his face, I knew. I fucking knew. It was Ghost. The video cut off. I sat there in the booth, my mind spinning. Ashley was alive, and Ghost had her. But why? He was supposed to kill her. That was the deal. That's what I paid for. But now, she was being held somewhere, tortured or worse, and I had no idea why. Before I could even process it, another message came through. This time, it was a link. I clicked it, my hands trembling, and it took me to some dark, hidden part of the web, a live stream. My blood ran cold. It was the same room, the same fucking basement. But this time, Ashley was awake, looking directly at the camera. Tears were streaming down her face, and I could hear her sobbing. She was begging me to help her. And then, Ghost's voice came through the speakers. Low, calm. "This is your fault," he said. "You didn't just want her dead, you wanted her to suffer. Now she will." The screen went black. I was paralyzed. This wasn't just some hit job anymore. This was personal. Ghost wasn't just some random guy from the dark web. He was playing with me, fucking with my life, and now I had no idea what was coming next. But one thing was clear. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I sat there in that dingy diner booth staring at my phone, feeling like the world was spinning out of control. My pulse was pounding in my ears, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The waitress came by to top off my coffee, but I didn't even look at her. I was too busy trying to piece together what the fuck was going on. Ashley was alive. Ghost had her. And this sick bastard was turning it into some kind of twisted game. The live stream was still open on my phone, but the screen had gone black. I tried refreshing it, clicking the link again, but nothing. It was like he wanted me to get a taste of the horror and then just leave me dangling. The worst part? I had no idea where she was. That cold, concrete room could be anywhere, and I had no way of finding her. I wanted to scream, but I knew that wouldn't do shit. I wanted to throw my phone across the room, punch something, anything to stop this nightmare. But I just sat there, frozen, my mind spinning. What the hell was I supposed to do now? That's when the messages started again. A string of them, one after the other. They popped up so fast I couldn't even process the first one before the next appeared. The first message said, "You have 24 hours. Then another, "Find her or she dies."
I stared at the screen, my heart racing. Find her? How the fuck was I supposed to find her? I didn't even know where to start. I couldn't go to the cops. I couldn't tell anyone about this. I was completely alone, and this sick piece of shit knew it. I opened my mouth, trying to take in a breath, but it felt like the walls were closing in. He was giving me a deadline. He wanted me to play his game, but he didn't give me any clues. No hint about where she was, no way to track him. It was like trying to win a game where the rules didn't make any sense. And yet, I knew I had no choice. I had to play. I got up from the booth, threw some crumpled bills on the table, and stumbled out of the diner. The early morning sun felt too bright, too harsh against my skin. My mind was racing as I tried to figure out my next move. I couldn't just drive around aimlessly, hoping to stumble across her. That was a waste of time, and time was the one thing I didn't have. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Ghost was watching me. I didn't know how, but I could feel it. This whole thing was like a sick fucking puppet show, and I was the one tangled in the strings. I checked my phone again. Another message. Don't run. Don't hide. You're being watched. Fuck. That sent a chill right through me. Was he here? Watching me from the diner? I scanned the parking lot, my eyes darting between the cars. There was no one around, at least no one that looked suspicious. But then again, I wasn't exactly thinking clearly. I didn't have time to freak out. If I didn't start doing something, she was going to die. I started driving, trying to think of any place that might make sense. The video had shown a basement. It looked old, maybe abandoned. There were no windows, and the walls were cracked. I tried to remember if there were any abandoned places around town, but nothing came to mind. Then an idea hit me. Her brother.
Ashley's younger brother, Todd, was always into shady shit. He was a sketchy little bastard who'd been in and out of trouble since high school. Drugs, fights, you name it. He lived on the edge of town, out by the industrial district where no one really went unless they had a reason. I hadn't spoken to him in years, not since he tried to borrow a couple grand from me to pay off some dealer. But if anyone would know where people like Ghost might hide, it would be him. I didn't bother calling. I just drove straight to his place. The drive felt like it took hours, even though it was only about 20 minutes. My mind was racing the entire time, thinking about what I'd say, what I'd do if Todd wasn't home, or worse, if he was involved. When I pulled up to his house, it was exactly how I remembered it, run down, with peeling paint and a yard overgrown with weeds. His piece of shit truck was in the driveway, so I knew he was home. I banged on the door, hard enough that the windows rattled. "Todd, open the door!" I shouted, not caring if the whole neighborhood heard me. I kept pounding until I heard shuffling from inside. The door cracked open and there he was. Todd. He looked rough, eyes bloodshot, hair greasy and unkempt. "What the fuck, man?" he mumbled, squinting at me like he couldn't believe I was there. "I need your help," I said, pushing past him into the house. He looked at me confused. "Help with what? Last time I checked, we weren't exactly on speaking terms." "Shut the fuck up and listen to me," I snapped. "Ashley, she's in trouble." That got his attention. "What do you mean in trouble? What did you do?" I wasn't about to tell him everything. I couldn't trust him that much, but I needed his help. "Someone's got her. He's holding her somewhere, and if I don't find her in the next 24 hours, she's dead." Todd blinked at me, still trying to process what I was saying. "Wait, someone's kidnapped her?" "Yeah," I lied, "and I don't have time to explain. I need you to think. Do you know any place around here, maybe out by the industrial park, where someone could keep her? Someplace abandoned, quiet?" He scratched his head, looking nervous. "Man, I don't know. There's a lot of fucked up people around here, but if someone's serious, they'd take her to the old slaughterhouse." That name hit me like a punch to the gut. The old slaughterhouse. I'd heard stories about it. It had been shut down years ago after some health violations, and since then, it had become a hangout for drug dealers and homeless people. It was the perfect place to hide someone if you didn't want to be found. "Where is it?" I demanded, my patience wearing thin. Todd gave me a wary look. "I'll take you, but if this goes south, man, I'm out. I'm not getting involved in whatever crazy shit you're wrapped up in." "Fine, just drive." We got into his truck, and he took off toward the outskirts of town. The whole ride was tense, neither of us saying a word. The sun was starting to set, and the sky turned a sickly shade of orange, making the rundown streets look even more ominous. When we finally pulled up to the slaughterhouse, it was worse than I expected. The place looked like it was rotting from the inside out. The windows were boarded up, the doors rusted over. Weeds and graffiti covered the walls. But what really freaked me out was the silence. There wasn't a single sound, no birds, no cars, nothing. Just stillness. Todd stayed in the truck. "You sure you want to do this?" I didn't answer him. I just got out and started walking toward the building. The front door was locked, so I had to force it open. Inside, the place reeked of decay, stale air and the smell of rotting meat clinging to everything. My footsteps echoed through the empty halls as I made my way deeper into the slaughterhouse, my heart pounding in my chest. Then I saw it. At the end of the hallway there was a door. It was slightly ajar, and beyond it I could hear crying. Ashley. I sprinted toward the door, yanking it open. There she was, tied to a chair, just like in the video, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes swollen from crying. But as soon as she saw me, her face twisted with terror. "No! No! Get away!" she screamed, thrashing against her restraints.
"Ashley, it's me!" I shouted, running toward her. "I'm here to get you out!" But she kept screaming, "No, he's here, he's—" Before she could finish, the lights flickered, and from the shadows I heard it. A voice. Ghost. "Welcome to the game." That voice, it was calm, almost mocking, but it cut through the air like a knife. I whipped around, scanning the shadows, but I couldn't see him. The slaughterhouse was too dark, too silent. My heart was pounding so loud, it felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. "Ashley, hold on! I'm getting you out of here!" I shouted, fumbling with the knots that tied her to the chair. Her wrists were raw from struggling, her face streaked with tears, but she was thrashing, trying to pull away from me like I was the threat. "No, you don't understand. He's been waiting for you," she sobbed, her voice trembling. "This was all for you." I couldn't process what she meant, not while I was still trying to get her untied. My hands were shaking too much. Every muscle in my body was screaming at me to run, but I couldn't leave her like this. I had to save her. I had to. Then, I felt it, a presence behind me. The air shifted, that instinctual primal feeling you get when someone's too close, right in your space. Before I could react, a hand grabbed the back of my neck, ice cold and strong, yanking me backward. I fell to the floor, hitting my head on the concrete. The world spun for a second, my vision going dark at the edges. When I looked up, there he was. Ghost. He stepped out of the shadows, calm and composed, wearing the same black clothes he'd worn in the video. His face was covered by a black mask, but his eyes, there was something wrong about them. They were too calm, too detached, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. He looked down at me with that eerie calm, his head tilted slightly to the side, as if he was studying me like some kind of insect he'd trapped in a jar. "You thought this was just about her?" His voice was low, smooth. He crouched down next to me, his gloved hand resting on my shoulder like we were old friends. "You think you could order a life taken like it was nothing and just walk away?"
I tried to scramble to my feet, but he pressed down harder on my shoulder, pinning me in place. I could feel his strength, his control. I wasn't getting away from this. "This isn't about Ashley," he continued, his voice almost gentle now. "This was never just about her. You made a choice. You came to me, didn't you? You asked for this. You wanted her gone, and now you have to live with it." I wanted to scream at him, punch him, do something, but I couldn't move. It was like he had drained the fight out of me just by speaking. All I could do was stare up at him, my mind racing. "Look at her," he said, nodding toward Ashley, who was still tied to the chair, sobbing. "She's here because of you. Every bruise, every tear, you did this. You brought her to me." "Fuck you," I spat, my voice hoarse, but I could barely get the words out. "You did this. You're the one—" He pressed down harder on my shoulder, cutting me off. His voice stayed soft, almost soothing. "No, you did this. You wanted her gone because of your own selfishness. I'm just the consequence. You didn't hire me to solve your problem. You hired me to make you face it." I struggled under his grip, but it was useless. He was too strong, too calm, like he had all the time in the world. And then he did something that chilled me to the bone. He laughed. Not loud, not maniacal, just a soft, controlled laugh that barely rose above a whisper. "Did you really think you could get away with it?" he asked, standing up slowly. "That you could hire a hitman on the dark web, pay your little fee, and then go on with your life like nothing happened? Life doesn't work that way. I don't work that way." I felt my chest tighten. He wasn't just a hitman. This wasn't just about money. This was something much worse. "I've been watching you for a long time," he continued, circling me now, his footsteps echoing in the empty room. "This isn't about Ashley. This was never about her. She's just collateral damage." He stopped, crouching down again, his face inches from mine. His eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time, I saw the full depth of the madness inside him. It wasn't rage, it wasn't hate, it was something worse, enjoyment. He was enjoying this.
"This is about you," he whispered. "About what kind of man you really are. You wanted her dead because it was easier than facing the truth, easier than dealing with your own failure. You didn't want to admit you couldn't control her, couldn't control your own life. So you handed her to me, and now you have to live with it." I couldn't breathe. My vision was blurring, my mind reeling. This was a game to him, all of it. He didn't just take the money and do the job. He took everything. My sanity, my life, my soul. I was the prey in his fucking sick hunt, and I had walked right into his trap. I finally found the strength to move, scrambling backward across the floor, trying to put some distance between us. But he didn't chase me. He didn't need to. I was already caught, and we both knew it. "Go ahead," he said, standing up straight, watching me with those cold eyes. "Run, hide, try to forget what you did, but you'll never escape me. You'll never escape this." I bolted to my feet, my body moving on pure adrenaline. I didn't look at Ashley. I couldn't. I just ran, stumbling out of the room, down the dark hallways of the slaughterhouse, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My mind was screaming at me to keep going, to get as far away from that place as I could. I burst through the front door and into the night, the cold air hitting me like a slap to the face. Todd's truck was still idling out front, and without even thinking, I threw myself into the passenger seat, slamming the door behind me. "Go!" I shouted. "Fucking drive!" Todd looked at me, wide-eyed, but didn't hesitate. He floored it, and we tore out of there, the slaughterhouse disappearing into the darkness behind us. For a few minutes, the only sound was the roar of the engine and the pounding of my heart in my ears. I couldn't speak, couldn't even think straight. All I knew was that I had gotten away, for now. "What the fuck happened in there?" Todd finally asked, his voice shaky. I didn't answer him. I couldn't. What could I even say? That I'd hired a hitman to kill my wife, and now he was playing some twisted game with me. That I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from.
We drove in silence for what felt like hours, the city lights fading as we headed out toward the highway. I didn't know where we were going, and I didn't care. I just needed to keep moving. But deep down, I knew it didn't matter. Ghost wasn't just some hitman. He wasn't just after Ashley. He was after me. This wasn't something I could outrun. I glanced at my phone, half expecting another message, another video, but there was nothing, just the dark screen reflecting my own pale face back at me. And then, just as I started to let out a shaky breath, my phone buzzed. A new message. With trembling hands, I unlocked it and opened the text. It was a picture of me sitting in Todd's truck, looking right at my phone. The game never ends.